softly whispers my canary in my headlong for the wall now, dead still in the garden, waiting for the reveille. My dog Ruth and I are about to do a little ruck. We're going to walk down a trail, up over this power line, and then back up it, get a little terrain work in. And I forgot my weight plates down in Virginia, so I went and found a big rock. And so with that, plus my camera gear and water and everything, it should get me right about 25-30 pounds, which is where I want to be right now, because it's early in the year, not doing a ton of terrain rucking yet. I'll work up to doing 20-25% of my body weight for a lot of it, but right now we need to be a little lighter. So what we'll do is we will walk out the top of this ridge, and that'll be like a little bit of a 15-minute warm-up or something. Then we're going to drop down, and then we will come up another trail. We'll hit that power line, and then we will walk up that, and it'll be a nice little workout. Should take about 90 minutes, something like that. That's where I want to be with this one. It's my first longer rucking session of the year, so I'm not going to push it too long. I'll work up to doing 3 some hour rucks, and then obviously like overnight backpacking trips and stuff like that. But for the first big one of the year, I'm not going to carry too much weight, and I'm not going to go for too long. And as I do this, I'm going to talk to you about some rucking. I'm going to give you some rucking advice, how to train for carrying loads on inclines and things like that. And we'll have ourselves a nice little time while we do it. Come on, dudes. Come on. Good girl. Good dog. Good girl. Good girl. Where did I put my keys? There. Okay, come on. So like I said, we're going to walk out across the top of this ridge. It's kind of a warm-up. It's going to take about 15 minutes to walk across it. Then we're going to drop down this big power line, and then we're going to walk back up it. And then on the way out, there's a trail that comes back up to this ridge, and we'll take that trail because it drops down and goes up again. Now, as I do this, I'm going to focus on keeping my heart rate down and staying at a speed that allows me to do that. So if it's, creeping up towards the top of my aerobic threshold, which is 144, I'll slow down and I'll practice what's called mountaineering steps. So they typically they do like 2 steps, pause, 2 steps, pause. I don't have a ton of weight on my back, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But if it gets to that point, I'll do it because the grade it's a little bit steep. We don't have real long terrain here in Pennsylvania because the mountains are not that big, but we do have steep shit. So it's you got to mind the steep shit early in the season. I have a lot of time on grades in my life and doing even incline treadmill work and stair climber work and stuff like that. So I can start on steeper grades than a lot of people, but a lot of people need to start on shallower grades, especially when they start, so they can build efficiency. I actually recommend a lot of people start rucking on flat ground and do incline work unweighted until they get efficient on flat ground, and they can pass something like our 3-mile ruck assessment, which is 20% of your body weight for 3 miles, finishing in 45 minutes or less with your average heart rate in zone 2. So the big thing here is don't throw a bunch of weight in your pack and then just go out and get on steep terrain, because you don't have the fitness or the efficiency under load to handle it very well. So you're gonna give your body too much stress, and you're also gonna create really bad habits with breathing and posture and your gait. So don't just jump into heavy weights on steep grades. Okay, it's been about 14 and a half minutes. We've made it to the end of this trail, to where the power line starts, and we're gonna start going up. A quick note on gear. I use an initial ascent pack. I'll preface this by saying that I don't get paid for any of this shit. I'm not sponsored or anything like that. But I like it because the frame is wide and it's carbon fiber, so it molds to your back. And so I use that pack. I also have my hunting boots on. They're Schnee's Beartooths. I'm not married to them. I like them. I'm gonna try out some Crispies and things like that, but I'm wearing my hunting boots and using my hunting pack today because, well, I have a Go Ruck pack and it sucks balls. And come on, Ruth. And just distribute the weight better. And why not practice with the gear that you're gonna use? So I'm doing that. Also, every 15 minutes or so, I'm gonna have about 20 grams of carbs. And so that'll give me, right around 60 for the hour. And that's a good place to be for a 90-minute workout. If I was going for longer, I'd probably bump that up, but I'm gonna sit down, or not sit down, but I'm gonna stop and have some fruit snacks on the way before I could go and check this view out. Might not translate that well on camera, but it's really pretty. So we're gonna go up and over now. Forgot to mention, I'm also gonna have a nicotine patch every once in a while because I'm what you might call an addict. Okay, we're heading down the power line now. It is a rocky bitch, so kind of gotta watch my step. I'm probably gonna fall and go ass over tin cups down this mountain because I'm talking to you and not paying attention to what the hell I'm doing. But we're going down, and we hit the bottom. There's a state road down there. We'll turn around and come on back up. We'll see how long it takes to do the round trip. Okay, we hit the road. We're on our way back up. Took about 5 minutes to get down. I'm gonna pay attention to my heart rate on this and not do anything stupid. My inclination is to see how fast I can get up this motherfucker, but I don't need to do that right now. We can save that for later in the year. So I had to set my camera up at the top, a little bit down from the top of the ridge, so it could film the whole thing. So that's where I started timing, but the top of the ridge is a little bit higher, so we'll see. I guess we'll fucking see. I just paused for some fruit snacks and to let my heart rate come down because I started ripping out of this bitch too fast. So we're starting the steepest part of the climb now, and I'm just gonna take it nice and easy, make sure that I don't creep up into zone 3 because I don't need to be there right now, especially since I already did a lactate threshold workout earlier this week. Not really at the point where we need 2 of those. So we're just gonna slow step it up this hill. Heart rate's at about 144 right now. That's at the top of my aerobic threshold. So we're just gonna keep climbing nice and slow as we work our way up. Okay, I'm actually taking my own advice and doing the mountaineer step, and my heart rate is staying in the mid 130s, and I'm able to move at a pretty much constant rate. So if you're getting out on terrain for the first time early in the year, the mountaineering step's a really good idea. It's also just a really good idea when you're at altitude and you just need to keep your heart rate down, because if you start getting up and get way too glycolytic and start burning carbs when you're up high, you're going to deplete all of your energy reserves, not be able to replace them, and then you're in a really big ball of trouble. So you want to stay as aerobic as possible when you're climbing uphill. And now, and even when you're hunting, obviously there are times when you have to push and you have to be able to do that and recover. But mostly we just want to train aerobically while we carry loads so that we do that well when we're out in the mountains for real. I just tried to tick off my dog, and the power lines are making static electricity. So I hope it's not frying my cinema camera at the top of the hill. That would be really bad. I'd be pretty upset with myself for doing that. But also, fuck ticks. I fucking hate ticks. Okay, so it took us about 20 minutes to get back up to my camera, which seems to still be working fine, by the way. There's the toots. So about 25 minutes round trip. We still have a little bit of a climb to go, not too much, but we'll get up there, take a little break, and then head back into the woods, drop down one trail, come up the other, just to get some more volume in. The grade's not the same. It's not nearly as bad. This grade's pretty good. You know, it's probably 25 or 30 degrees. So it's tough to see from the camera, especially at this wide angle thing, but good first uphill with some weight. I have probably 25 or 30 pounds on my back. So good first one for this year. Obviously going to do a lot more work, and by the end of the summer, before we go to Montana, I'll be flying up this bitch with a lot more on my back. Around 40 is what we'll train with, because that's about 20% of my body weight. So don't need to really train in the mountains with much more than that, because it'll start to reduce your efficiency, like I talked about. I mean, you start getting on the north side of 30%, you really see a lot of diminishing returns. So starting like 10 to 15% of your body weight, working up to about 20, and being consistent with that is the best course of action. And then when we want to work with heavier weights, we'll do that either by doing HICT step-ups, or we'll do it with on the treadmill or the stair climber, and do zone 3 steady state work with that, because it's a very controlled environment. We do it for shorter durations just to acclimate to the pack and to top off our muscular endurance. But doing that out in the mountains is a bad idea. You don't need to train with a ton of weight to be ready to carry weight in the mountains, especially if you're doing everything else you need to do from a muscular endurance standpoint, a strength standpoint, and an aerobic standpoint. All right, we made it to the top. We're about to drop back down and head back into the woods. I talked about food, but I didn't talk about water. I really like Dr. Andy Galpin's equation, which is you divide your body weight by 30, and that's about how many ounces of water you need to drink during every 20 minutes during hard exertions. So that's a really good way to stay hydrated if you're going out and doing something hard, or if you're doing something for a long time, or both. So that's divide your body weight by 30, and that's how many ounces of water you should drink every 20 minutes or so. All right, we're back in the woods. We're dropping down one trail to have to climb back up the ridge. And there's another point I want to bring up, and that is progressing your rucking, incline training, all of that kind of stuff. First thing, increase volume before you increase intensity. Now, I've seen some famous hunters post about how they just did a ruck and it went really well, so now they're going to add weight. You add weight last. You increase volume because it's going to make you more efficient, and it's going to make it better so you can adapt to the weight when it is time to add weight. Always add volume until the weight that you are working with feels really easy. Then start to add weight. And again, you don't need to be training with more than 20% of your body weight consistently, maybe up to 25 if you're really experienced. But and we know consistent training above 30% is bad, but even we know that we start to see diminishing returns when people consistently ruck above 50 pounds. So no matter what, 50 pounds is kind of the cutoff for consistent training. Trust me, your body will adapt to it, and you'll do just fine if you have to carry heavier loads in the mountains. Another thing to talk about, besides your heart rate, your respiration, all that stuff, how do you know that you're working at the right intensity? You can judge by how your legs feel. So if your legs feel kind of like they're getting dead or they're heavy, that's fine. If you start to feel a really strong acid burn, you're pushing too hard. You're starting to recruit a lot more fast twitch muscle fibers. You're starting to push into more glycolytic areas, so getting more contribution from your anaerobic system. And so that is not what we want. So feeling like your legs are getting heavy or dead, totally fine. Starting to feel a really strong acid burn, not okay. You need to slow down until that dissipates, and then move at a pace that you don't get that acid burn. Okay, we're getting towards the top of the last climb, and we're only at about 75 minutes. So I'm gonna get up here to the trail on the top of the ridge, and then go back out a little bit and come back to the truck just to get the full volume of the time in. But pretty good first one on terrain for the year. Here, sit. Good dog. There. Good girl, stay. All right, we unpacked, did a little cursory tick check. I'm gonna put my headlamp on when we get home and really go over, because those little bastards are small. I'm also gonna do a sit down recap of some of the things that I talked about while I was out rucking. Ended up finishing, and we did the 90-minute ruck. Average heart rate was 131. 2 pretty good climbs in there. So pretty good first one for the year. I'm just going to start really increasing the volume of my weighted incline work. I've mostly been running for aerobic work through the first little quarter of the year here. Some incline work on the treadmill with my pack, some hiking, and some flat rucking. And now it's time to really start to increase the volume of how much incline rucking I'm doing. So that's what I'm gonna do that. But I'm gonna sit down and do a recap all this stuff for you when I get home, and that way it's nice and polished and you can walk away with a lot of information. What do you think, Ruth? She's pumped. All right, we're back. Tick check's complete.
Toots is all clean, which is really nice because I hate those little bastards. And I want to recap some of the things that we talked about on the hike. So first off, first thing I told you is that we started off with an easy 15-minute walk across the top of the ridge. This is important because it gives your aerobic system a chance to come online. If you start out really hard, too fast, what you end up doing is creating an oxygen debt that you can't make up. And then your anaerobic system starts doing too much work, and then you just fatigue way too fast. Part of that is your fast twitch muscle fibers come online way faster than your slow twitch fibers do. And so if you start real hard, you just feed that cycle because your fast twitch muscle fibers function more on carbs than they do on fat. And so you just perpetuate this cycle and draw too much on anaerobic energy systems, and you fatigue. So even if you're going uphill, you have to start right uphill. Man, even taking a few minutes to walk around the parking lot, do something like that, or just starting really slow on your first go uphill is really important. Another thing I want to touch on. So I started on a really steep grade. I would not recommend that for everybody. I have a lot of experience hiking up terrain under load, and I'm aerobically in pretty good shape. My muscular endurance is pretty good. So it's not a big deal for me to do that, even though it was my first long terrain hike of the year. If it's not for you, I recommend starting on an easier grade or doing a lot of treadmill work first. Typically what I start people off with is flat ground, honestly, and get people efficient under load on flat ground while they do unloaded incline treadmill work. Starting off with like 10 degrees, a 10 degree incline, working up to 15. But if you're ready for pack work on an incline, start off with about 15% of your body weight, 10% if you're really inexperienced or out of shape. And on a 10% incline with 10 to 15% of your body weight, somewhere in there is going to be where you want to start. Go until that's really easy. And then what you want to do first is manipulate your volume. So instead of adding more weight or adding more incline, add more volume. So let's say a way to do that is either add more time to one session or increase the amount of sessions you do across a week. So for example, let's say you're doing one 45-minute session. Well, take that to 60 minutes, then add a 60-minute session and a 45-minute session, or then bump that to two 60-minute sessions, then add another 60-minute session until you're up to 3. If you accrue the volume over a handful of weeks to a month, it's going to get easy. Then you can start to add incline. Then as you start to get even better on those inclines at about the same amount of volume, then start to add weight. You'll notice that I had about 30 pounds in my pack on this one, which would be about 15% of my body weight. I'll hang out there for a while, probably through April into May on those steep inclines. Now, when I'm on lesser inclines, I'll go up to 20% and stick there. But we're doing that to stay efficient and so that we don't overtrain our anaerobic systems, and so that we can move at a relatively constant pace. If you get out on steeper stuff with heavier weight too fast, you're gonna have to take a few steps and take a break, take a few steps and take a break, and you're not gonna be able to even keep that mountaineering pace that I was talking about. So it's important to get efficient and gradually increase the grade and gradually increase the load in your pack. Another thing, once you get efficient, sticking around 20 to 25% of pack weight for your training, and for most people, that'll top out at somewhere in the 40 to 50 pound range, 35 to 50 pound range, is important because once you start getting on the north side of 30%, you really start to see diminishing returns. You get inefficient, your posture goes to shit, your breathing goes to shit, your gait really changes. And so you end up with all these bad habits, but you also give your joints more than they can consistently handle. And this really starts to break you down. So training at 20 to 25% of your body weight is really important. It will have you ready for heavier packs, trust me. And then you can acclimate to heavier packs with shorter workouts, like some incline treadmill workouts that are, 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how fit you are. And that would be something that you really need to pay attention to, because you don't want to crush yourself. And like I said, we use HICT, which is a form of aerobic strength training and strength endurance training, and also has some muscular endurance aspects to it as well, where you just do step ups on a box with a heavier pack. It's a very controlled environment, allows you to acclimate to heavier packs while also building strength endurance and muscular endurance. So you don't crush yourself, you don't beat up your body, but you also get the feeling of having a heavier pack on. I mean, I'll do those sessions with up to 100 pounds in my pack. Again, I've done them a ton. I've been doing them for, Jesus, a long time now. So that's something that you have to work up to. And when you do those sessions, whether you do one of the incline treadmill sessions with heavier weight or you do the HICT sessions, you want to stay no higher than your low zone 3. You start to get above that, you start to tap into anaerobic metabolism too much, and then the session doesn't become what you need it to be, because you start to recruit your your type 2X fast switch muscle fibers. You can't really train those aerobically, so they're terrible to build muscular endurance with, or for either using carbs or for using fat. We want to stay in that low zone 3 because we can still really use our type 2A fibers, which you can develop aerobically, which we want them to work in concert with our slow twitch fibers. So you really don't want to creep up to your anaerobic threshold when you're doing those, also called your lactate threshold. You don't want to creep up there, because you're not going to get the training effect that you want. And also, if you're working that hard, you're going to beat the piss out of yourself, okay? And think about what you want when you're going up the mountain, right? Like, you don't want to be hitting threshold. You don't want to be doing that, because first of all, if you're at a high elevation, a high altitude, you burn through your carbs, you get through all your stores, you're screwed. You don't have them for when you need them, and you're just not going to be able to recover and go day to day. So you mostly, when you're moving up the mountain, you want to be in zone 1, zone 2, maybe low zone 3. So we don't need to go train that. Now, at some points, we want to push our lactate threshold so that we still get more contribution for our aerobic system, but we don't want to train like that. You know, for example, I was talking about doing the mountaineering step earlier, and I started slowing down so I could stay in zone 2. Could I have flown up that mountain and got my heart rate into the 160s and got up there much, much faster? Absolutely, I could have, but it's not the point, and it's not what we want to train. So we need to train in a way that allows us to build muscular endurance, our aerobic system, and efficiency under load. I also talked about water and carbs. So carbs, for like a 90-minute to 2-hour session, somewhere in the 30 to 60 gram per hour, you know, breaking that up into doses that you're eating every 15 to 20 minutes is where you want to be. Longer sessions, you're likely going to want to creep that up, because you're just going to use more of your carbs, right? So we need to replace them so you're not completely depleted when you're done. You will burn through muscular and liver glycogen way faster than you realize if you're working. So, and keep in mind that even though zone 2 is still mostly using fat, you're still going to burn carbs. 60 to 80% of your energy contribution is going to come from fat during zone 2. When you get up into zone 3, it's about 50-50. Now, as you get towards the top of zone 3 and get into zone 4, that's when it tilts towards more anaerobic energy production, and you start to burn carbs way faster, right? So no matter what, even if you're in zone 2, you're still using carbs. Replacing those carbs as you work, or eating so you don't deplete yourself, is going to give you a much higher quality session. And that's what we want from this. Like, at some points it's okay to go do fasted stuff, but during these longer workouts, we want to eat some carbs so that you don't deplete yourself, so you can recover from it, you know? We talked about water. I like Dr. Andy Galpin's equation. Divide your body weight by 30. That's how many ounces you need whenever you're exerting yourself hard. So sipping on that, getting that amount of ounces, for most people, it's going to be somewhere between like 4 and 6 ounces every 20 minutes or so is going to keep you hydrated. And so that you also can recover. You get dehydrated, it's going to be really difficult to recover. Also, as the session goes on, you're going to have more cardiac drift, meaning your heart rate's going to start to rise more, because you just don't have as much blood volume. So your heart has to work harder to get more blood sent around your body. So it's important that you stay hydrated. Other ways to monitor your intensity during some of these terrain sessions, other than having a heart rate monitor. this is good because you'll go to places sometimes where you don't have service. And like me, I can't stand having a fucking watch on my wrist, so I take my phone. There are places where I go and ruck and do these terrain work that I don't have cell phone service, so my heart rate monitor doesn't communicate with the app on my phone. So we have to have other ways to monitor our intensity. First is breathing. If you can carry on a full sentence, carry on a full conversation and or get a full sentence out before you need to take a breath, you're probably at a decent place. We also want to monitor how our legs feel. If your legs feel tired, kind of dead and heavy, that's okay. If you start to really feel a lactic acid burn, if you start to feel an acid burn, it's not really, we don't need to get into that. But anyway, if you start to feel an acid burn in your legs, you're going too fast, you're working too hard, and you need to slow down. So deadliwolegs are okay, burn is not okay, all right? We want to make sure that we do that. Now, I'm going to put an article in the description of a link in the description of an article that I wrote about sheep hunting, how to prepare for a sheep hunt in the Northwest Territories. Now, here's the thing. If you're going to the Northwest Territories to hunt sheep, read it. There you go. But it also has a pack training progression in there that progresses you through how to progress from flat ground to steeper inclines to more weight. It's a really great read. Even if you're not sheep hunting, it'll walk you through how to do that. Also, I'm going to put in the description a link to our pack capacity calculator. So if you do our 10-minute step-up test, which is 20% of your body weight, 12-inch box, 10 minutes, at your fastest sustainable pace. So you shouldn't go out for a minute and then die off and then just have to trudge through the rest of it. Your fastest sustainable pace. So that means you probably start to get a little faster during the first couple minutes, and then you can maintain that. You do that test, you plug your numbers into the calculator, and it tells you about where your safe pack weight is right now for carrying things uphill. Not necessarily for training, but let's say you have a hunt coming up and you know that your pack weight on the way in is going to be 60 pounds, and then whatever your critter you kill, maybe you're carrying 80 to 100 pounds on the way out. It's going to tell you if you're ready to do that. And if you're not, then you know you have some training to do. And it does so because like if we have different bands set up. So for example, the top band, if you hit 420 or more in 10 minutes, you have a lot of capacity because 20% of your body weight isn't fatiguing you too much, right? If you can do 42 step-ups in a minute and carry that on for 10 minutes, 20% is way, way lower than your ceiling of what you can handle. But if you're only hitting 300, then your ceiling isn't nearly as high. And that's how it estimates it. I built this based off of research from the military and different mountaineering stuff. And so I took that, compiled it, put it together, came up with this tool. It is a Google Sheet. So when you download it, you make a copy, it saves in your files, and you get to keep it for the rest of your life. So whenever you test yourself, you can see where you're at based on where you need to be for your hunt. Okay? So thanks for watching. I had a fun time walking you through my first terrain ruck with my pup Ruth over there, and I'll be back with more great training information soon.